Are you licking brushes for that nice, sharp tip?
Ew!
Well, sucking your brush like a lollipop is a bad habit, but not as bad as the first one on the list, neglecting the basics. Here's the thing, it might be tempting to go balls to the wall with those advanced techniques that you see on the beautifully painted models, but skipping fundamentals will haunt you. Miniature painting is like building a house. You gotta start with a solid foundation and build on top of that. If the foundation is weak, everything you build on top will fall apart and crush you and kill you. Yeah, I'm not sure if this analogy works, but anyway, trying to paint stuff like non-metallic metal or playing around with glow effects might be intriguing. And hey, you can absolutely go for it, but knowing the basics will make it so much easier. Number 2, not seeking help. Don't be afraid to ask for feedback. I know that you wanna be self-sufficient master of your craft, but sometimes the best thing to paint faster and better is to learn from others. So why should you even bother? Miniature painting is a solitary activity, so it's not always obvious what you're doing wrong. If you feel like you are not making any progress and you are stuck, it's a good idea to reach out to others. Now, if you have the idea to reach out to me for some feedback, unfortunately, I have a shit ton of such messages. Instead, you can use many supportive Facebook groups or forums, and you'll be surprised how much it helps. It doesn't matter where you ask. The important thing is that if you find a struggle, most likely other people have been there, done that. And if you really want some feedback from me, you can actually join my Patreon for that, but the bottom line is that learning from others and asking them is better than struggling alone. Number 3. Overcommitting. It's easy to get excited and start one project after another, but if you take on too much at once, you'll be screwed. Painting minis takes time, patience, and a whole lot of focus. And if you bite off more than you can chew, you're gonna end up with a sad face and a whole bunch of half-finished minis. Yeah, I have this problem as well. So what's the solution? Simple. Start with a manageable number of minis and focus on doing them justice. And preferably paint just one project at a time. Painting a whole army, just break it down into smaller batches so it's manageable. Don't be like this guy. What a fool. And also, it's okay to take a break. Unless you are an absolute madman, painting for several hours every single day is unsustainable. Number 4. Being too rigid. Being inflexible with your approach is, in my opinion, one of the worst habits. I mean, sure, it's good to have a plan and stick to it, but if you are not open to new ideas, new techniques and experiments, you'll miss out on fun and improvement. There are tons of different styles, techniques and approaches. Restricting yourself to just a few of them means all your stuff will look the same. And hey, maybe you like painting everything so it looks like Warhammer box art. But to me, that gets boring very quickly. I mean, shit, have fun doing 3 rounds of edge highlights everywhere. That's not fun, that's hell. So don't be afraid to try new colors, new methods, new everything. You'll discover what you like and what you dislike, and that's the point. If you don't like anything in the end, you can fix it anyway, so don't be hard on yourself and have fun. Number 5. Winging it. Look, I get it. When you start, it might seem like slapping some paint on your minis is pretty straightforward, right? Think again. If you don't plan ahead, like at all, you are headed for a one-way ticket to disorganized town. Population? You don't want to lose track of which color is which and stuff like that. And if you are working on multiple minis at once, it can get real confusing real quick. If you are painting an army, it's a good practice to write down which colors you used or find a color scheme beforehand. If you are painting a standalone model, it's not really necessary to write it down, but still, it's good to have a rough idea which parts will be what color. Just find a reference, identify the main colors, and roll with it. Okay, now is as good of a time as any to tell you where is this miniature from, which is today's sponsor, Art of the Genre, and the project called Legend of Keepers. This Kickstarter campaign has a series of dungeons for 5th edition D&D, and you can play not only as heroes, but monsters as well. And also there is PvP. But let's look at the miniatures. These are classic fantasy minis with a little bit of spice added to them. And you know what? There are over 100 of them and are ready to be printed. Now obviously it was quite difficult to pick just one, which is my favorite, so I also printed this Demoness, and I'm planning to print the Banshee and the Warlock as well. For my D&D players, there is so much value in this Kickstarter campaign, but for me, Obviously, the most value is in the amazing minis. By the way, the minis are sculpted by lazy Squire Games, and I have already painted this guy, which is from them as well. So if you are in the market for some gaming content or amazing minis, check out the link in the description. And if you are a Zumikito fan, there will be a surprise in the upcoming days. Number 6. Buying too many tools. I know that you want the best brushes, and the best paints, and an airbrush, and a 3D printer, and soon enough, it's more than your rent. But focusing too much on gear will make you regret even starting the hobby in the first place. Just keep in mind that it's not about the gear, it's about how you use it. Just like your pin! You don't need to go broke to paint your minis, just a few quality brushes, some lamp and paints will do the trick. Do you need stuff like an airbrush? Well, even though it's really nice to have, just like a 3D printer, I wouldn't really say you need it. And let's be real, there are definitely people that use fancy tools as a crutch. They think that buying into that new flashy paint Kickstarter will magically make them a better painter. But we all know it's about skill and practice. Instead of spending your precious money, focus on building skills and knowledge. Number 7 is overcomplicating things. It's easy to get bogged down in details and lose sight of the big picture. But the simpler you keep things, the happier you'll be. If you get too caught up in the technical stuff and steps you take, it can get very complicated rather quickly. But Zumikito, you told us to have a plan! Well, yeah, it's nice to have a plan and general structure, but just keep it simple. Don't track every single step you make or use every color in the existence. Most likely you'll use like 20 to 30 anyway, and you can mix up the rest. And even on the miniature, you don't have to sweat over everything. Some details are not even visible. And that actually ties into number 8. Don't be a perfectionist. Look, miniature painting is a challenging hobby on its own, and trying to achieve perfection is pretty much impossible. I know that you want your minis to look flawless, but that can lead to being too hard on yourself. Personally, I know a few people that are too intimidated to even start, because their vision is too far from their skill set. But if you never start, guess what? You'll never get there. A painted miniature is always better than grey plastic. And nobody starts out as a master painter. Don't compare yourself to others, compare yourself to who you were yesterday. Oh hey, I made a video on that. So don't be a perfectionist, don't beat yourself up over small mistakes, and enjoy the process. And if you wanna really enjoy it, you also shouldn't do number 9. Rush through the painting. Do you just wanna finish your model in a few hours and be done with it? Well, stop right there! Okay, not really. You can speed paint your army so you can play with your miniatures, but if you do that all the time, it's gonna kill all the joy from the hobby. And this hobby is predicated on patience, so adding speed into the equation is not really helpful. Like, of course you don't have to take too much time base coating your model and stuff like that, but when it comes to details and using multiple layers of paint, you can't really go too fast. Take your time, let each layer fully dry before applying more, and enjoy. Like, I assume that this is your hobby and not a job, so there is no good reason to feel like you have to be done with everything and stress over it. But even that is not as bad as number 10, giving up too easily. It can be easy to get discouraged when things don't go according to your plan. However, giving up is not the answer. The thing is, every painter faces challenges and setbacks. Nobody is perfect and nobody gets it right the first time. But all the fails are part of the learning process. Do you remember how I straight up f***ed my Space Marine army with an oil wash? Well, guess what? I could give up and strip my entire army, but instead I pushed through. And now I also know what not to do. So even if something doesn't look 100%, don't give up. Now, do you have to royally screw up like I did to learn? Not really. You can absolutely learn from the mistakes of others, but if you do make some mistakes yourself, just learn from them and fix them. And do you remember how I told you to not be too rigid? Well, there is a very unusual tool for miniature painters that you wouldn't expect to help you improve, but it does. So if you want to improve your painting skills, check out this video, because it's quite surprising. And see you there!